Alrighty, dope heads, this is it. The moment you've been waiting for all week. Our week 6 rankings and prediction show next on the Fantasy Dopes podcast. Welcome to the Fantasy Dopes podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Parker. Today, we will be discussing our customized Week 6 Fringe rankings and predict some deep sleepers that have potential to edge your opponent in the wonderful world of fantasy football. Since this is our first true ranking show, let's go over our philosophy real quick. We're just mere weathermen, or weatherwomen, in the cutthroat, live-or-die, winner-take-all atmosphere that is fantasy sports. We try to accurately predict player performances based on game scripts going into the weekend. But scripts can change like the weather, and shit happens in the NFL. So listen up for our spicy tips and decide whether or not you're going to be a baller and roll the dice on a sleeper with big upside, or puss out and be like all our other chumps out there. And with that, I'd like to welcome in our gurus of the podcast, our father figure, Mr. Michael Warren Herbert. Also joining us in the house, resident guru, Mr. John Fazio. Welcome, guys.
Weather woman, huh? Well, that was a little bit of my mistake because I actually wrote this intro, so I apologize in advance, Jillian. I didn't want to hurt your feelings.
Thank you. It's like when people think that girls know nothing about sports all over again.
I'm all about equality. I'm pretty sure I talked about it on a podcast earlier. Herbert, I think you could piggyback off that. Power to the women.
Yeah, I love women. All of them. They're fantastic. Maybe we'll change it to meteorologist next week.
Do you know that I actually have a nickname? It is Meteorologil.
Wow.
Wow.
And a piece of the layer gets unfolded.
That is priceless.
You've just learned something new about me today.
That's great.
I'm not sure I can really say that. Meteorologil?
Meteorologil.
That's a mouthful.
I had a going away party at my last job, and they put that on my cake.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of cake was it?
It was a really good place in New York. I forget the name of it, though.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So women can do the weather and sports.
Yes, I do not want to discriminate to anybody. I'll just get that out there. But let's get right into some of the bye weeks that a couple of teams are on. We got the 5-0 Vikings, the surprisingly 5-0 Vikings, and Bucks, who I believe are 2-3. They are both on a bye. So if you got these players in your lineups, get them out ASAP. So getting on to our Week 6 rankings, we've experimented with naming full list of players in the past. And it was a bit confusing to listen back to because we were trying to keep track of who was ranked where and just got all mixed and jumbled up into one big clusterfuck. So what we have thought of was to provide our rankings in full on our website at www.fantasydopes.com/blog. It would take way too long to list all these players, so we're just highlighting some guys who we think will have big days and say where they're ranked exactly and what group of players they're in with as well. So we're not going to spend too much time, if at all, about the no doubt starters, your studs. We'll provide links on all social media platforms. They'll be released every Wednesday night. So, Jillian, what do you got?
Yes, and unless there's a reason to bench a stud, Jillian, which we'll cover here, by all means, take him out of your lineup. If you don't hear that fantasy warrior's name and he's ready to suit up in a game, start him. And with all this being said, let's get right to it. Our Week 6 rankings.
Week 6 power rankings. Sorry.
Dun, dun, dun. We are going to start with our top 5 guys. Take it away with Will Fuller at number 1.
Yep. I had him low last week in the rankings. That was a very appropriate listing where he was. Xavier Rhodes didn't cover the field too much of the game. He was on him a little bit, but he was more on Hopkins as the game was going on. But only had one catch. I think he's an excellent bounce back candidate going up against the Indianapolis Colts. It's a Sunday night football game in Houston. They're going to be at home. Place is going to be rocking. Now going up against the Colts, a divisional rival. I think he's up for a big, big game. I think he's going to go for over 100 and a score. So fire him up if you got him in your lineup.
I love it. I have to tell you, we have exactly two fans in Houston that listen to the show, and one gave us a lot of shit for your ranking him low, and the other listened to us and sat him. And what do you think happened? The guy that sat him won. The guy that told us we were full of it, started him, and he lost. So I'm just saying. So I give you props there because I was on the fence about that, and you were right. So God bless. And he's at number 1 this week. So
Yeah, and number 2 is a guy that's actually a little even I don't want to say crazier, but it's probably not a guy that is up there in rankings. Maybe somewhere in the middle. And Herbert, you actually touched on him in our waiver wire pickup show. So why don't you take it away here?
Well, anytime I can start a player that has a first name of a female in their last name, I jump at that opportunity. So wide receiver Cameron Meredith for the Bears, going up against Jacksonville. That's a pick of a week for me. Kevin White went down with the fibula injury, and he's done for the season, I believe. So Meredith takes over his role, and he showed he can play. He can ball. He shined against the Colts, 9 to 12 targets, 130 yards, and a TD. So looking good. And he's facing Jacksonville, which Swiss cheese defense at home. So he should have another very good game. Jacksonville is coming off the bye, so they'll have had a little more time to prepare, but still Cameron Meredith, I think a very strong option for you moving forward with this retooled Bears offense and stud quarterback Hoyer.
Yeah, all of a sudden. Who would have thought that?
We all picked him up. All 3 of us.
Yes, I tried getting him in all 4. I was outbid. Somebody bid $30. Actually, my older brother bid $30 on him. Huh. So I give him props for that. I don't know if it would have went that high, but regardless, that still might pay off in the end. We'll see how that plays out.
A few more players in our top 5. We've got Tevin Coleman, Devonta Freeman, and C.J. Anderson. Tell us a little bit about Coleman.
I just feel like Coleman is going to perform better than Freeman. And now these guys are back-to-back. They're at 3 and 4. I just think solely Coleman is going to be the focal point of their offense more because I believe the Falcons will be down in this game. They're in Seattle. It's a tough place to play. Seahawks are coming off a bye, so they studied more time. And I think Freeman will still be a good play. I just think Coleman gets a slight edge here because he's a bigger threat in the passing game, and they've been using him more as a pass catcher, more so than Freeman has so far this season.
I guess I have to agree with you there, John. A slight edge to Coleman, but my heart says Freeman. Maybe that's just because he's on one of my teams, but either one could have a breakout. Either one could get the touchdown. Certainly in a PPR league, Coleman's going to have some more viability and more points. So I guess I got to put Coleman ahead of Freeman on this power ranking list, like you did. Coleman 3, Freeman 4. Who do we got for number 5?
C.J. Anderson of the Denver Broncos. Just an easy matchup for him. I know last week he kind of struggled against the Falcons, and their backup, Devontae Booker, who we'll touch on later on in this show, kind of ate into his workload. However, I don't know if that was just a game script type of situation. I think coming out of the gate, Anderson is going to be ready to rock the ball, and I think he should have a pretty good day. And just a side note, Gary Kubiak, their head coach, will not make the trip to San Diego. He's had a bit of a migraine issue this whole week, and he's actually staying behind to get his temperature back to 98.6. So to Kubiak, get well soon.
Much love from the fantasy dose, Mr. Koob.
And before we move on to our top 10, I just wanted to let you know, Cameron Meredith, 6'3", weighing at 207.
There you go. Big boy.
So he's got some size. Some size. Did it say anything about his shoe size?
They don't list that right here in the important stats that I should know about him. And a couple guys we're going to pull out of our top 10. We're going to start with Theo Riddick, who I unfortunately dropped before last week's game.
Oh,
but
chilly.
I picked him. Well, that's my league with 4 bench spots. Don't even get me started on that league. And I picked him back up for this week, and I've got him starting.
Oh, there you go. So that did all as well as it ends well. So yeah, like you said, we mentioned him in our recap earlier this week. And now, I don't know if you saw, but Justin Forsett signed with the team earlier this week.
I did.
And Theo Riddick missed practice on Wednesday. He had a little bit of a knee issue. So there's a chance that Forsett eats into his role a little bit on Sunday. They are facing the Rams. They're a bit of a tough defense, especially against the run. However, I'm still banking on the fact that the Lions will use Riddick in their passing down situations on offense, and that he gets a lot of catches in the backfield and possibly a score. So I still think he's valuable as a pass catcher and a useful option in fantasy this week. Maybe, if not an RB2, definitely a flex position.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're shocking anyone with that. I mean, he certainly had a big game last week, so everyone's going to be looking at him. So it'll be interesting to see if he can come through again and solidify his position a little bit, or have a bust and then Jillian drops him again, and then the next week he does well.
That seems to be what's happening.
So yeah, we actually go ahead.
No, you go ahead, John, please.
I was just gonna say, so from one running back to another, we have Mr. Terrence West at number 9. He's going up against the Giants in East Rutherford. And now some of the experts have West ranked lower than we do here at 9 on the fringe rankings. Let's not get that twisted. But my philosophy is they fired their offensive coordinator, Mark Trestman. They brought in Marty from the former Jets offensive coordinator, as well as the Eagles offensive coordinator. And I think this is a statement game for the Ravens. They're going to come out guns blazing against now a suddenly beat-up Giants defense. And I think they're going to pound the rock with West. They might give him like 25 carries in this game. They always wanted him to get the ball. They wanted to run with him a lot. For some reason, Trestman abandoned their run the last couple of weeks. And now that he's the focal point of their running game, with Forsett gone, I think he's in line for a big day.
I concur, and I think that, even though you have the emerging Dixon also in the backfield, he's still not, I think, 100% and still not ready to be the guy. So I think Dixon being better than Forsett actually helps West.
I agree. And also, just to piggyback on Mr. Dixon, he only had about 3 carries last week. He only had a couple of yards. And he actually was noticeably, not limping, but it just seemed like he was out of sync with the offense. He was a bit rusty, which is to be expected. He was injured a couple of weeks. So it might take a couple of weeks to Dixon to get fully involved with their offense. However, I think this week is an excellent play for West. He's a top 10 option in fringe, in my opinion. And I think if you have him, you got to start him.
I'm going to let Jillian talk about number 10. Jillian, who do we got for number 10?
I need a little Julian Edelman therapy. That's what I think right now. I'm not happy. I have him in a standard league. Maybe my mistake. I know that people in PPR leagues he had 10 targets last week. Obviously, that helps you out majorly. But if you have him in a standard league like me, you are not happy. And what do you do with this guy who has only one time hit over 8 points and barely? I mean, I want to play John Brown over him. I almost want to play Cameron Meredith over him. I can't. What do you do with Julian Edelman?
If you have Cameron Meredith, I would play him over him. That's my personal opinion.
See,
now this is, again, up to the owner of the fantasy teams to make that decision. I just want to stress that real tightly.
Because you know that once you put him on your bench, he's going to go off.
Right. Now with Edelman, now that he has Brady back, we mentioned this earlier in the week, that's his boy. They're best friends. He's going to go to him no matter what. And especially in front of that New England crowd, they're going to want them going. They're going to get these signs out for him. Brady and Edelman, where art thou? I hope there's a sign like that, because I'm going to say I called that on the podcast. I just feel like he's an excellent play if you don't have these top 9 players that we mentioned before. He's still a very valuable asset in fantasy.
Maybe I give him one more week at home.
That's your decision.
That's your decision. I have to stand by. It also sounds like when you say his name that you say Jillian Edelman. But, I don't know what that means, but interesting.
Maybe it means a little bit more.
Maybe.
It's a deeper philosophy to discover.
All right, we'll move on from Julian, but we will be back to talk about him another day.
Fair enough. All right,
let us
number
talk
11.
about Sammy Coates. He is coming in at number 12, and he was picked up off my waiver wire immediately.
I did the same in one league. He was available. He was one of the top waiver wire pickups, I believe, across the board. However, he was spotted with a sizable soft cast on his left hand.
Was he?
He suffered a laceration to his finger earlier last week, so it was before the game against the Jets. The severity of the injury is still unknown for now, but more information should come out before the weekend, so definitely stay tuned to our Twitter account, all our social media. We'll have updates on Coates. With that all being said, though, I still like him at this spot, even with that little boo-boo on his hand. And I think he's definitely in play for another deep ball down the field for a touchdown because the Miami defense, in one word, is trash.
I don't blame you there. Miami has not gotten the job done, and Sammy Coates, like we talked about earlier in the week, he had a great game, and he's humble, and he's working hard to get better and to correct the drop passes. So can't go wrong there. Number 15 on your list, Jamal Charles, Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not sure if I agree with this ranking here. This is going to be a big week for him. He's coming off the bye week. He came back 2 weeks ago against the Steelers on Sunday night. I think they're really going to let him out the stable, so to speak, this week, and he's going to go bonkers. So if you drafted him, you drafted him high. You're definitely starting him. I just don't know about a 15 ranking. John, what do you have? What say you?
Well, I'll say this. It's a little skeptical because they only used him sparingly in that Sunday night game against the Steelers back in week 4. So obviously he had the bye week. He had time to heal. It's just I feel like in the beginning of the game he might be a little slow to start. Might have a step missing. Defense might read him really well. Oakland's not, a pushover team. Their defense isn't the best, but, they're still a pretty good team. And like you said, I think they will use him. They'll break the chains off of him. I think they'll use him a lot. It's just the fact I don't know if he's going to be his same old self. He had a lot of injuries in his past. I think this ranking is more of a conservative rank than it is low, in my opinion. So, like you said, if you drafted Jamal Charles early, you've been waiting to start him your whole season, you have anxiety about not starting him, you want to get him in there, by all means, I don't blame you one bit. But I just trying to get maximum value here, and I think he'll have like an average to pretty good day, like a 12 to 13 point range. So we'll see what happens in Oakland. I just think the jury's out on him a little bit just because of his injuries past.
And that's fair. That's fair. But this guy catches the ball out of the backfield. In a PPR league, it's an absolute no-brainer. If you got him, you're playing him, and he could definitely have a big game. Is he going to have 3 or 4 touchdowns? Probably not, but it's possible.
All right. And let's move on. We've got Darren Sproles and Tyler Eifert next, who we're still not sure if he's playing. He's still questionable, and some people have also been waiting to play him this year.
Alrighty, so Sproles, listen, I think last week, if anyone was watching that Eagles game against the Lions, Ryan Matthews coughed up a ball late in the fourth quarter, basically sealed their game. I know the Eagles had a chance to score again, went through his first interception to end the game, but I think that might have damaged Matthews' confidence a bit, and I think they may use Sproles a little more than what people are expecting in this game. They're in Washington. They don't have a great defense. I think I just have that feeling that Sproles will see a little more carries and opportunities in the offense. I don't want to say he's going to have more carries than Matthews, but I certainly think he's going to have almost a 50-50 split with him. So if you have Sproles, especially in PPR, he's an excellent flex play this weekend.
I feel like that seems to be the pattern if you have him in PPR.
Yeah, I mean, he's out of the backfield and punt returns. He can certainly run real fast past defenders. He's like a Theo Riddick, but a little bit smaller overall. He's just very fast and small. He can disappear out of nowhere and just take it to the end zone. So I think he's an excellent start in both leagues. He just gets a little more uptick in PPR just because he gets a couple more catches. That's all.
And father figure, would you like to tell us about Eifert?
Eifert, he's my Julian Edelman. Only I'm smart enough to not go down that road and not draft him. I had him, I believe, as a rookie a couple of years back, and he was fantastic. I mean, he's a tremendous talent.
He's out of Notre Dame as well.
Out of Notre Dame, but he's made of glass. I mean, he just can't stay healthy. So I don't see how you can trust him. I mean, Could he play? Sure. Could he catch a couple of TDs? Sure. I mean, they certainly need him in that offense, but I just don't trust him. I don't trust him to stay healthy. So it's frustrating. I want to love him. Handsome fellow.
I just want to add to that too. He missed practice again on Wednesday, and he kind of said that his back was sore, but that wasn't like confirmed from any of the reporters or people on the team. So it's a little bit questionable what exactly is happening with Eifert. So I think he may be on the more side of doubtful than questionable. So if I'm ready to look at another tight end if he's not ready to go. I just had him here just because of his touchdown potential, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, if you have him on your team, then you better you must have you obviously have a backup already. So if you can afford to carry two tight ends, then yeah, you can make a game time decision on Sunday. And if it looks like he's playing and you want to roll the dice, then God bless. But now you got to carry two tight ends, and I don't know how great your other tight end is. And if you have a good one, then I'd rather go with a bunch of other guys over Eifert until he can show that he can be healthy and produce.
And moving on from Eifert, we've got Michael Thomas, Tavon Austin, Isaiah Crowell, and Jeremy Curley up next on the list. Any of those stand out to you?
Yeah, let's talk briefly about Curley. He was another guy that we highlighted in our waiver wire segment. He's ranked 27th on our list. And listen, he's the number one target now in their receiving core going forward. And Kaepernick's back, so he's going to want to look at somebody that's comfortable in the offense, and he looks like he's the most comfortable so far. So I feel like he's going to rely heavily on Curley. I feel like they're going to be down in most of this game. They'll obviously run the rock with Mr. Hyde. He'll have a big day as well, but I think if they're going to keep moving the chains, they want to stay in this game, they're going to have to go to Curley. So
coming up next, I want to talk about, we have Tyler Lockett, Eddie Lacy, and James Starks. Eddie Lacy, I currently have going in my flex spot right now, but is questionable to start. What do we know about him?
I believe I'll take this, John, if you don't mind. I don't know if he had full practice Wednesday, but he got individual work done. I believe he's going to be a go for this weekend without question. So he does still have some residual pain in the ankle from the injury on Sunday night, but he's going to go. He's going to play, and he's going to get some points. So I think that he's a clear start if you have him.
I disagree.
John?
I disagree.
You disagree.
I think he's going to miss this game. He came out of the game Sunday, didn't come back. But if I have Lacy, I'm looking elsewhere as of right now. I'm looking at James Starks as a potential backup. He's ranked just a tick below him. And obviously, if Lacy gets out, he moves up. I'm not in love with Starks' game. I think he has 1.9 yards per carry so far this season, which is not good at all. I know he hasn't had many opportunities to run the rock too much, but believe it or not, he was actually left off practice as well. He had a problem with his knee, but the team said it doesn't look serious, so he should start if Lacy misses the game, which I think he will. But stay tuned for updates on both of these players. We'll know more.
And we've got another couple of questionable guys. There are a lot of questionable players for this week coming up. We've got Steve Smith Jr. and Jonathan Stewart, also both questionable, coming up next on this list.
Number 34 on the list, Steve Smith Sr., Baltimore, playing against the Giants. It's looking more and more doubtful that Smith plays against the Giants this weekend after missing practice on Wednesday. If he can't go, obviously Mike Wallace jumps up to this spot in the rankings. You'll have to check Twitter. You have to check back to see what happens. But, I love Smith and Flacco, but if he's not going, obviously he's not getting points. And if he's questionable, I don't know how many points he's going to get, even if he does get out there. So, Johnny, Wallace is your guy, I know.
Yeah, Wallace immediately becomes their number one threat in that offense in terms of their wide receiver, even their tight end core. I think Wallace is a better play than Dennis Pitta. So he's going to get a lot of deep shots down the field. Giants secondary is trash, so there's a really good chance he scores, and he has over 100 yards. Like I said, West will be pounding the rock a lot in this game as well, so I expect big points out of him. So we mentioned Stewart as well. He's right below Mr. Steve Smith at 35. They're playing the Saints in New Orleans, and Stewart looks like he's ready to come back. He returned to practice Wednesday after missing the last 3 games with a hamstring injury, but he might not have a flashy day on the ground. I know they are playing one of the worst defenses in the league, but still think he's an excellent flex play. Do what you want with him, but he's a solid option if you need him there.
And if he's not playing this weekend, I know a lot of people who picked up Artis Payne this week.
Yeah, he wouldn't really have too much of a role if Stewart gets in the game. He'll probably back him up. It might be like a 70-30 split carry, but when you get to that point in the offense, it's just too unreliable to trust a backup, especially because two of their backups were starting. They were almost splitting time. So it's tough to gauge either one guy or the other. I would just roll with the guy who's starting at that point. He's been practicing. He just hasn't been in the game. So I think it's safe to roll Stewart out without worrying about too much of the backup scoring on him.
Number 41, the Seahawks wide receiver, Jermaine Kearse.
All right, so this is crazy talk, I guess, if people just heard his name. Yes, Jermaine Kearse, the wide receiver for the Seahawks. I have him right below Allen Hurns, and I have him above Randall Cobb. Now, look, this is a complete shot in the dark, okay? This is a case where it's either I told you so on my end, or you're questioning what the hell are you thinking. Probably be the latter once this week ends. He might only have 2 catches, but this is why I'm hanging my hat on this guy. Pete Carroll earlier this week was praising Tyler Lockett, that he was going to have a big game. Now, last week, if you remember, the Lions coach, Jim Bob Cooter, praised that Golden Tate, that's really his name, by the way, he was praising that Golden Tate was going to have a huge game. And what did Golden Tate do? He got Ugats. That's what happened. So I don't know if Lockett's going to have a great game. He's coming off injury. I know they have the bye. They're saying that he's rested up. He's ready to go, but they didn't say he's exactly 100% healthy. So with that being said, Baldwin should get his looks and targets. Jimmy Graham will also get his looks and targets. But I think they're going to rely more on Jermaine Kearse than they will Lockett in this game.
Why do you have him ranked 10 slots below Lockett?
I'm basically just taking from what the coach is saying. So if he's saying that a player is going to go off, then he should deservingly be ranked higher. But if you were to look at other rankings across the board online, Jermaine Kearse doesn't even crack the top 100. This guy is at number 41. So this is a really high ranking and a really big shot in the dark. But if you're struggling with a flex spot, you don't have many guys that you're comfortable starting, and you want to take a deep shot, this guy could pay off big time.
All right, we're going to move a little farther down the list with Chris Hogan, who has been stealing time from my boy Julian Edelman.
My boy Chris Hogan, a.k.a. 7-Eleven, because he's always open. Yeah, a great start. He was on my list earlier this week. I think he's a little low here. Led the team in receiving yards last week with Brady's first game back. Another big juicy opportunity to cash in on some yards against the Bengals, who did not look great defensively last week. The only issue, with Hogan is you got a lot of weapons, you got a lot of mouths to feed. And Brady knows he's got to get Edelman going, so he's going to try to push the ball there. He's got 2 tight ends, so there's a lot of mouths, but I still think Hogan is a very viable option. But I'm not the guru. I'm just George Michael with a little faith.
The father figure, if you will. And John, coming in right underneath him, Chris Ivory.
Yeah, I believe Chris Ivory is another surprising pick at this part of the rankings. He hasn't been the explosive player he once was with the Jets last season. Missed a couple of weeks due to illness, and injuries to his ankle and knee kept him out week 3. So coming off a bye with rest, I think they're going to want to start getting Ivory going in the offense. I mean, they signed him. They wanted to rely on him on the backfield. They had to go to TJ Yeldon, but I just feel like this is Ivory's game. I think this is like the make or break game for him, and they're going to want to get him a lot of carries, get him going. So we'll see, but I like Ivory more than I do Yeldon in this game.
And Michael, would you like to talk about our pick coming in at number 50, Jay Ajayi?
Yes, my boy Jay Ajayi, Dolphins running back going against Pittsburgh. He really got the Dolphins running game going, what feels like for the first time all season, Sunday against the Titans. Steelers are going to score a lot of points. The black and yellow are bringing it. So I don't know how that's going to affect the running game. I expect it to be put on the back burner, but he can catch some passes, and this could be a turning point for him. So he had a great game last week, or good game last week, let's just say. There's a chance Foster could return. I doubt it. Made of glass, and so this is a really big shot for Ajayi. So I think he makes it happen, brings it home.
All
But I
right.
think it's a decent pick.
I just want to say, there's saying apparently that Foster may return. It's more likely that he will return than sit out. So, again, this is another check Twitter, find out more information. We'll be on it. But there's a chance that Foster might slide into this position and Ajayi starts going way down the list because they haven't really used their backups too much since he went down. So
keep an eye on him until the last minute, basically.
exactly.
And John, tell us about our boy Rashad Jennings, still questionable. Do we think he's going to start this weekend?
Oh man, it doesn't look good. He hasn't started since week 2 against the Saints. Stumps still seems to be giving him problems trying to catch and pass protect in the backfield. So, I mean, if he does wind up playing this weekend, I still will look elsewhere. He might not be 100%. He might not catch too many balls. He might drop a couple. Baltimore actually has one of the toughest defenses against the run so far this season. So just an overall bad matchup for the Giants running backs. If you own any of them, I think I would just stay away from him this week, see how he goes, and then take it from there after this week.
And Michael, how excited are you right now to talk about our next guy, Hunter Henry?
Hunter Henry going up against Denver. He comes in at 58 this week. TD last week with Gates in the lineup, which is fascinating. So he's going to look to keep it going. And if you're starting him, you're going to hope he keeps it going. But he's going against one of the toughest defenses in the league. So Denver had an off week against Atlanta last week, although they did shut down Jacob Tamme. Tough defense. It's going to be interesting. I think some of the guys a little lower down on the list might make a better play, especially with Gates probably returning to more and more game action. But he does have some upside. So I don't know. It's a gamble. Johnny, what's your take on this? I need to bring in the guru on this one.
I pretty much agree with you said, actually, for once. I
Wow.
think I know it's kind of surprising now. You know, it's like the first time. It feels weird. It doesn't feel right. But you know what? I can't argue the facts. The writing's on the wall, I believe, and I think we're just gonna have to write him down in our notebooks. Henry, I don't know if he's a start. I think he's, like you said, if you got a guy like Zach Ertz who's a tick higher than Henry, I'd rather go with him. Gary Barnidge, another solid option at tight end. Zach Miller, again, is another guy. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's more of a tight end 2 this week with a little less upside than last week. So, I would just stay away from him. Toughest defense. I'm not taking chances there.
Yeah, I mean, he's 58 on the list, so God bless.
And moving farther down the list, number 63, Titans Rashard Matthews. John, tell us about him.
So Rashard is looking more likely that he's their number 1 option in Tennessee. I know Delanie Walker is their top dog in the receiving core, but I think Matthews is now their number 1 wide receiver. Tajay Sharp has been very underwhelming since he blew up week 1. And I know Murray obviously is
terrible.
He's been awful. And I know Murray's been one of the centerpiece players in that offense in fantasy in general so far this season. So I think he's a decent play, though, going up against the absolute worst defense in the league, the Cleveland Browns. So I believe he might be in line for a nice fantasy day. Let me just take it over from here, the next two, or I should say the next one, which is Justin Forsett. We briefly mentioned him earlier. And I actually said that he might have an immediate role in the offense with Riddick. He's a little banged up, apparently now. He was left off practice on Wednesday. So he might have a little bit of a role. Am I starting him? Not necessarily. But he's a good speculative ad if you can afford to drop somebody on your roster. We'll see what happens with Forsett, but I think just a speculative ad, see what happens. Worst comes to worst, you can just drop him next week.
Yeah, I have trouble seeing it. I mean, the Ravens wouldn't have got rid of this guy if he had something left in the tank. So to see him come into the Lions offense and instantly put up points it's a little bit of a stretch for me. But we'll see.
And coming in from 4th set to Chris Thompson at number 68, who is ranked higher than the starting running back for the Redskins. Talk to us about that, John.
I have him ranked a tick higher than their starter, Matt Jones. He's ranked 2 spots lower at number 70. Jones, if you look at his game scripts and past weeks, he's struggled against good defenses, especially ones that are good against the run. So I believe the game script this week favors the Eagles. I think they'll win. It's likely the Skins want to get Thompson going out of the backfield just so they can get some yards, and he's their pass-catching guy. So if I were owners of both backs, I would rather look at Thompson more than I would Jones, because I don't think he's going to get anything going this week.
And we've got, coming in down at number 78, we've got, which should be a good matchup, we've got the Cardinals against the Jets, wide receiver Michael Floyd. Do we think he's going to be having a good game this week?
Well, I got to tell you, I'm staying away from Floyd. He lost the starting job to John Brown, and he's just 10 targets in 2 weeks is not very sexy. You do have
Not sexy.
It's not sexy. You got Palmer coming back. The Jets defense is, pretty good. So, listen, I'm staying away from him. I would absolutely start Jamison Crowder, wide receiver for the Redskins, who comes in at 80. I'd start him in a heartbeat over Floyd. So I disagree with those rankings. I would have Crowder higher than Floyd for sure. But that's another podcast for another day.
Some of these disagreements that the two of you are having, I'd like some of our Twitter followers to get in on that and let us know who they side with.
That's fair. I mean, because I can't imagine anyone outside of Arizona starting Floyd over Crowder. Just saying.
Just like to know. Team Michael, Team John, Hunter
Hashtag.
Henry. I don't know. Coming in at number 81, Jeremy Hill. John, talk to us about him.
So yeah, Hill was limited at practice Wednesday. He's likely to remain limited throughout the week. He's one of my top ignored players this week, going up against a team that will probably put up at least 24 points on them. So I think the Bengals are going to have to play catch-up for most of this game. And when that happens, their other back, Gio Bernard, is in the backfield pretty much the whole time. So that won't give Hill many opportunities in this game. The Patriots defense will limit Hill as much as they can. And especially with the chest and shoulder issues he's been having the last couple of weeks, I think he's a guy to avoid for sure.
Coming in at 96, the Texans tight end, C.J. Fedorowicz.
I like this guy as a pick him up, see what he does. I read an article this morning that he's been developing a bit of a chemistry with Osweiler. He had 8 receptions on 13 targets for 109 yards and a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. Now you got to remember, they played the Vikings last week, and he was actually able to create some space and gain some yards on him. So I think if you're in a deep league, you want to take a shot on a tight end. Maybe you have somebody on a bye next week. You could certainly add him right now, see how it plays out. And if he has a nice game against the Colts on Sunday night, you'll be able to at least avoid the waiver wire for him if he blows up.
All right, we're going to talk about our last 2 guys before moving on to some quarterbacks. Michael, who do we have at the end of our list here?
Number 103, Cardinals wide receiver Jaron Brown. Now, I don't like Michael Floyd, but Jaron's interesting. Hard to put ahead of Floyd, I suppose, on the list. But Palmer is back, as I mentioned. Loves to take deep shots with Brown. So you could get a bomb, you could get a big reception and a touchdown and get a little crazy. If you're feeling frisky, he's a fringe guy, but I could see a deep bomb for some points, some serious points there, folks.
So coming in at 122 here is Wendell Smallwood, the rookie running back for the Eagles. Now, I mentioned earlier, I was kind of pounding the facts on this before, that Ryan Matthews may be struggling with his confidence after fumbling late in the game last week, so his leash could be shorter in this game if he continues to struggle. So if that happens, there's a good chance the Eagles bring in Smallwood to take over, and Sproles will still have his role as a pass-catching back, but Wendell might have the chance to start in the future and pretty much take over. So again, if you want to just pick him up as a speculative ad, you can certainly do that, see what happens. But if he goes off, he's not on the waiver list, he's on your team. So that's a big, big opportunity for you.
I would like to see the NFL take Wendell and combine him with Danny Woodhead, and we just have one awesome running back called Wendell Smallwoodhead. Is that possible, John? Can we do that?
I would shed a single tear since I had Mr. Woodhead in 2 leagues, but sure.
I did too.
But sure.
See,
I
for
like
people
that.
like you have the Woodhead, you bring in Smallwood, and it's like a second life.
The name is a little much, though, no?
Smallwood head? That's beautiful.
I love it. We should
Is it
adopt that.
sexy, Michael? Is it sexy?
It is Smallwood head. It depends on what you're into, but yeah.
We got to get that a hashtag on the page ASAP.
On that note, that about wraps up our fringe rankings for week 6. Coming up, we'll review our quarterback rankings and put a bow on this thing. We'll be right back.
Want to know which fringe players you should start or sit in your fantasy leagues? Want up-to-the-minute news and analysis from the beat reporters around the league? Follow @FantasyDopes on Twitter to get your fix and fill the void of having to worry about which player will feast or famine.
Welcome back, Dopeheads. Let's get right to our quarterback rankings and lightly discuss some defenses and kickers you can pick up this week to add a little more insult to your foes. Here are the quarterback rankings for week 6, which we will have posted on our website at fantasydopes.com/blog. Guys, tell me about the quarterbacks that stand out to you this week.
All right, so obviously we have our obvious starts post already up. If you want to check that out, you can see there's 10 quarterbacks that are, I believe, must starts in any fantasy league. So these are guys outside of the top 10 who I believe will have good days. Maybe a couple we'll mention here that might not have such great days. So my pick of the week, I'm going to go with Andy Dalton of the Bengals. I believe the Patriots, like I said earlier, will be scoring early and often. And that's going to leave the red rifle to air some balls out to his receivers and climb back in this game as much as possible. I can see him getting a lot of garbage time points, especially if Eifert starts. And if he doesn't start, that might tick him down a little bit, but they still have a guy called A.J. Green. I think he can go off at any point. So I think Dalton is a great pick for daily. If you want to have a streamer, you have Winston in your lineup, and you need a backup, I think Dalton's a solid pickup.
I'm going to go with the Flying Hawaiian, Marcus Mariota, who comes in at number 2 on this list. Very highly criticized this season. Hasn't been great, but he was a champion in week 5 against the woeful Dolphins. The Titans are coming home to play the terrible Browns. I think it's going to be a big week for Mariota. The receiving core does worry me. They're not very good, as we've illuminated on this podcast, but they have Walker at tight end, and Murray's been a beast out of the backfield. So look for big points and big things from Mariota. I also think he's going to put one in the house himself and run one in. So big points for Mariota this week.
Yeah, he certainly did last week, and definitely a great option as well. I think you kind of flip a coin between those two, in my opinion. So I want to talk about a guy that maybe praised a little higher, and I think may not have such a great game. And he's ranked at number 8 on our list here, Dak Prescott, the guy that still hasn't thrown an interception for the Cowboys. Now, I'm a little hesitant to start him if I own him. I think his non-interception streak will come to an end. Lambeau is a bit of an intimidating place to play, especially if you're a rookie. Their defense usually hangs in games despite some key injuries to their backfield. So I think this is more of a start at your own risk. If you like him, you start him. But I think I would look elsewhere instead of Dak. I think he comes back down to earth a little bit in this game.
And Michael, who is your last pick at quarterback that you want to talk to us about?
I don't know if I have the balls to start this guy, but I have to mention him. Coming in at 12 on our list, Colin Kaepernick of the 49ers. As we first predicted on the Fantasy Dopes Twitter, Kaepernick gets his first start of the 2016 season in Buffalo. This is a very tough matchup for any quarterback to make your debut for the year against Rex Ryan's defense, coming all the way across the country. But a lot of eyes are going to be on Kaepernick, and I don't know what he's going to do, but I sure hope he does something. I think the 49er fans desperately could use someone in that offensive position. I don't know how rusty he's going to be. I don't know that he put enough size back on. I don't know how well he's going to bounce back from his old injuries, but this is much-watched football for sure. All eyes are going to be on Kaepernick.
Yes, I agree. I think it is an interesting watch. However, I do want to mention one more guy before we get off this QB list. And I said I would do this earlier this week, and I want to do it right now. I have dead last, Ryan Tannehill. Trash. If you have this dude, drop him and make sure you try to delete him from fantasy, because this dude is absolute garbage. will not be the starter in Miami when it comes down to Week 17. Week 6, Fantasy Dopes podcast. You heard it here from the house guru.
All right, I think it's safe to say that John hates Ryan Tannehill.
Before we move on, I have to throw a Hail Mary in here. When the Dolphins were getting shellacked by the Patriots a couple weeks ago, Tannehill came back in that second quarter, had a pretty good game, put up some numbers. So they're going to get shellacked by Pittsburgh, no doubt. So you talk about garbage time and all that. Tannehill's going to be throwing the ball, and he does have receivers. So he could have a decent game, although he does suck.
That's the Dolphins fan. Yeah, I respect that.
John, you want to quickly tell us about some of the defenses you think are going to do well this week?
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple that may be on the wire. Some, obviously people have the Denver Broncos, the Seattle Seahawks in your lineup. So going off the cusp a little bit, I got Tennessee. They're playing Cleveland. Needless to say, Cleveland's one of the worst offenses in the league. You pretty much play the odds on any team that faces them. You might get some double-digit points, so that's a good play. I also like Baltimore. Although they are at East Rutherford, the Giants haven't been clicking in offense at all, so I think that's a good start as well. And I also have Detroit against LA. Same thing. Rams offense isn't that great. And finally, I have, if you're really trying to reach, the Packers facing up against Dallas. Like I said, I think Dak struggles a bit in this game. Might pick up a couple of interceptions, see how that plays out. But I think those are some good defenses to stream if you need them.
And before we get out of here, a couple kickers you've got going this week you think are going to do well?
Crosby would be my guy going up against Dallas's defense. I have Cairo Santos, who's coming off a bye. He's on the Chiefs, facing Oakland. He can kick a lot of long field goals, so if you get 5 points for a 50-yard plus field goal, he's a good play as well. And I have Matt Prater of the Lions going up against the Rams. Same thing. I think their offense gets on the board a bunch, but I think he's in play for a couple of field goals as well, since the Rams defense isn't that bad.
And the gurus have spoken. We will continue to update our lists as injury news and other information becomes available throughout the week. So follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Dopes to get up-to-the-minute injury news and updates on the latest in fantasy football. Good luck on your teams this week to everybody listening and to the both of you. Before we get out of here, any final words, guys?
Just a reminder, friends, the Vikings and Bucks are on buys this week, so get them out of your lineups, all right?
And I'll say, do not blame me for your losses. Blame yourselves.
It's not our fault. We're just giving you some suggestions.
The meteorologist is doing her work.
Oh, hashtag.
It's going to be a beautiful day tomorrow, guys.
It's going to be
all right,
grand.
friends.
So go get some sleep.
Yes.
Brush your teeth.
Check out the posts on the website to see our rankings in full. And let's get set for Thursday Night Football.
All right. Until next time, guys.
We out. Cheer.